Ohai. Morocco, the state in northwest Africa. Morocco, the country which entered into the African Union in 1963, but from 1984 to 2017 wasn't his dick because of claims to Western Sahara. Enters into League of Arab States, the Union of the Arab Maghreb, Francophonie, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Group of the Mediterranean Dialogue, Group 77. Member of the Union, though. The country officially is called the Arab. To al-Mamlakatu al-Maghribiyat, literally, Kingdom of Maghribia. Besides, in the country there are self-names the Arab. Al-Maghrib al-Aqsa, the distant west, and the Arab. Marrakesh, the name from an oikonym of the city which in the Middle Ages was one of her capitals. The French form of the name of the country Morocco, used in various options of writing, gained distribution in Europe at the end of the 19th century. Morocco, Marek, Morocco, etc. An exception is Spain. In Spanish the country is called Marruecos. People inhabited the territory of Morocco since an early Paleo. Near Casablanca, Tomasai, and Sal. Tools of Achulian and Mousterian cultures are found. Finds early Homo sapiens from Jebel Okada dated age of 240 plus minus 35,000 years to 378 plus minus 30,000 years. During the most ancient era, climatic conditions of the region were more favorable for activity of people. Venus from Tantan is dated age more than 300,000 years ago. The age of 108,000 years dates the skeleton of the child of 8 years found in 2010 in Timor. In the first millennium BC, the Moroccan lands belonged to Carthage. From 2nd century BB, after conquest of Carthage by Romans, the Roman dominion in North Africa began. In 429, the territory of modern Morocco, the Roman province of Mauritania Tinjatanskaya, was occupied by Vandals, but in 100 years it was returned to structure of the empire by Byzantines. The Idrisitsky coin, which is wrapped out at Al-Aliyah, Fes, Morocco, 840 AD. In 682 the Arab conquest of North Africa began. The first Arab state in the territory of Morocco was founded in 784 by the Imam Idris ibn Abdullah fleeing Arabia. The greatest blossoming was reached by the Arab state at dynasties Al-Muravidav and Al-Muqaddaf in the 11th, 12th centuries. At Al-Muravidic Morocco was the center of the huge empire occupying territories of modern Algeria, Libya, Tunisia and extensive territories of Spain and Portugal. However, with falling of a dynasty Al-Muqaddaf also the empire broke up. Since the beginning of the 15th century also the Spanish expansion to Morocco when several seaports were occupied by Europeans as started a new Portuguese, and then the first expedition was conducted by Portuguese to Ceuta in 1415. However, in the 16th, 17th centuries, new growth of the Moroccan state, which reached the highest power at the Sultan Ahmed al-Mansur, whose board is called country, Golden Age, began to be observed. At this time, 1591, The Moroccan troops under the direction of Dudar Pashi occupied the Empire Sangay, the state in the western Sudan, having taken trans-Saharan trade and salt and gold under the control. Also at the time of blossoming in the 16th century, the Moroccan sultans managed to broaden as much as possible the state territory, having fought the majority of the occupied cities off Spaniards and Portuguese, having taken the western part of Algeria and having removed border in the south to Guinea. After Ahmed's death, about 1603, the state began to be weakened owing to continuous internal wars, so to Muley Sharif, Ali and Fatima's descendant, it was easy to overthrow in the middle of the 17th century a dynasty of the first Sultan Saditev and to base new, still ruling, a dynasty of Alawites, or Hosini. Muley Ismail ibn Sharif, governing from 1672 to 1727 as the greatest despot, is most known from them. At his successors, the civil strifes and contentions because of a throne bringing the country more and more to decline before accession to the throne of Sidi Muhammad. 1757-1790. Differing in softness and aspiration to enter the European culture became frequent. After his death, the period of the internal conflicts and wars began again. At the Sultan Muley Sulayman bin Muhammad, 1792-1822. The period of relative well-being was started over again. In the 17th-18th centuries of Morocco was considered as the piracy state, as in many cities the actual power was in hands of sea pirates. It is rather interesting that it didn't prevent sultans of Morocco to carry out diplomatic functions. On December 20, 1777, Morocco, one of the first states, recognized the actual independence of Shah. During the Spanish-Moroccan War of 1859-1860, the Kingdom of Spain occupied a part of lands of a sultanate. At the end of the 19th century of Morocco, operated since 1894, Moulay Aab by Al-Aziz, became object of rivalry of Spain, France, Britain, and in the 20th century, as well to Germany. The capture by France of all Sahara and a part of Sudan, which made by her ruler of almost all Western Africa, caused her aspiration to prevalence in those neighboring states which kept still the independence. On April 8, 1904, Morocco was recognized as the Anglo-French agreement, falling within the scope of the French influence. But this agreement made horny a protest from Germany. In 1905, Wilhelm II visited Morocco, and after that the German resident in Festdattenbach, German, and the Chancellor Bülow began a campaign against the French influence in Morocco. They demanded that the project of reforms in Morocco developed by France was considered at a conference of representatives of the interested powers, but isn't carried out by only one France. The sharp refusal of Delcasse to enter negotiations with Germany on the issue of reforms in Morocco nearly brought France to an open gap with the German Empire. Rouvy's intervention and Delcasse's resignation helped to settle the conflict, and on July 10, 1905, between France and Germany, the agreement on convocation of a conference was signed. The agreement, it left open a number of questions about reorganization of the Moroccan police, the basis in Morocco of Bank, granting to Germany Mogador port in the Atlantic Ocean, etc. The question of reorganization of police led France and Germany to the conflict. Germany insisted on that reorganization of police was charged to all to the interested powers. France resolutely protested against it. As a result, all controversial issues were submitted to the international conference, which gathered in February 1906 in Algeciras, Spain. and had to decide destiny of Morocco. As a result of the Moroccan crises of 1905 and 1911, France found a big part of the territory of Morocco. During World War I, a large number of Moroccans was called up for the French military service. About 800 of them died on fronts. After the 3-year period of Massachusetts actions in a number of the areas of the country which passed into an insurgent anti-French performance and the political crisis caused by attempts of change of the king in March 1956, France recognized independence of Morocco, and in April independence was gained also by the Spanish Morocco, though several cities remained for Spaniards. Morocco becomes the member of the Union, the ILO, the IMF, League of the Arab Countries. In 1984, Morocco left the African Union in protest at acceptance in its structure of Western Sahara, which Morocco